Hello, Selectmen late.
Hey, how are you?
Sore.
What's going on?
Just trying to recover from Saturday.
Yeah, how'd that make out? How'd you make out with that anyway?
I'm sore. I'm too old to ski in mashed potatoes now.
Well, it is what it is, buddy. It is what it is.
I survived. I'm still running around here, scrambling a little bit. I'll be back with you momentarily.
Yeah, no problem.
Maybe it's just you and I.
Maybe it is.
And who's ever watching in cyber world and cable TV.
We got somebody out there tonight? Maybe. Maybe not.
Don't know. Nobody on the Zoom yet, but YouTube's going and cable TV's going.
Yeah, good. So have you been doing that bicycling thing very long, David?
What bicycling thing?
What were you doing? You had a helmet on. I just assumed you were on a bicycle because I saw all kinds of bicycles on the back of in the back of that photo. That you sent.
There were people there biking. I was skiing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Good for you, David.
I'd done some earlier this winter, snowball and stuff, but this was their last weekend at Sugarloaf, and boy, it was a beautiful day, but man, it was mashed potatoes, and that just when you're old and out of shape like me, that just beats your legs to no end. But
I hear you. Hey, Mike.
Hey there, how we doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah.
like,
There,
good evening.
we're here. Good morning. Hi there. A lot of buttons.
Hi, Lately.
Good evening.
Hi, Lately.
Hello, Mike.
Hello.
Hey, David.
Oh,
David, what made you think you sent the wrong agenda out?
Because I looked at my own agenda packet, and the agenda didn't have 16 items on it, had 15.
Huh.
And then I panicked and thought, oh goodness, did I scan the wrong thing? Did I copy the wrong thing? And
Better safe than sorry, eh?
yeah.
yeah,
How's your hydration going?
yeah. Just need to get up and move. Don't mind me if I start doing calisthenics in the middle of this meeting.
You got a fresh air walk, didn't you?
When?
Go to the post office.
Oh, yes, long way, all what? 100 yards total back and forth.
It's something.
I mean, yeah.
True.
It's the getting up out of the chair that's the ticket. Yeah.
Yes.
Or are you on a exercise binge or something, David? What?
No, I went next to the last day of skiing at Sugarloaf on Saturday, and they had what would have been okay conditions, but it was so warm. It was just like skiing through mashed potatoes, and my legs just, I was just beat by the end of the day.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Old age and out of shape, I guess.
I know. The
Yeah,
things we, yeah, all the things that we used to walk off or not even notice. We don't.
Yep.
Hi, Josh.
how's it going lately,
Hi, Josh.
everyone?
Good evening.
Hello.
Evening.
There's Jordan. Hi, Jordan.
Hello.
Hi, Jordan.
Well, it is 6 p.m. on the nose, so let's get going. Welcome everyone to the Lincolnville Selectmen's meeting. It is the 26th of April. Whew, knocking on May. We are still operating during the state of emergency as declared by the governor, and as such, and always, we are subject to the Maiden Freedom of Access Act, and we are conducting this meeting via Zoom. The public is encouraged to participate through telephonic, video, electronic, or other similar means of remote participation. As a reminder, we want the public to participate via the chat feature. Raising your hands or waving wildly works also. We'll try to get you in the order in which you wish you've raised your hands. The board will take any and all action for voting via roll call. That includes adjournment. And if you have any questions, we will effort to answer them through the town office or contacting one of your select board members. Before we get going, Joshua, do you read the quote of the evening?
Sure. So act that your principle of action might safely be made a law for the whole world. Immanuel Kant.
Amen.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Good.
And David, do we have anyone that wishes to address the board under the citizens forum for any non-agenda items?
No one submitted anything via email, and the two people I see as attendees right now are both agenda items for later, so I guess not.
Okie dokie. Let's move along to the administrator's report then.
Couple of things. Most importantly, absentee ballots will be available for all of our local election items in 2 weeks. It's not too early to get in an absentee ballot request now, and we'd hold it until the absentee ballots are actually in our possession, and then we'll distribute them. For anybody that has dog licensing that didn't do it by the statutory deadlines, the grace period is about to end by the governor's executive action. So you know who you are, get your dog's license now. And finally, an item that's not on the agenda, the paving contractor that didn't finish their work last season or last fall has reached out to us and asked if the town wants to allow them to do the work this spring when the plants open up and the weather will be acceptable. They're willing to do it at the price quoted us last year. That price seems to be comparable, or perhaps a little lower than what people are getting for bid prices this year. I told them I'd bring it to the board. I'm not particularly fond of the idea of rewarding a contractor for not doing their work last year by awarding it this year, but it may be the prudent thing to do in terms of dollars and cents. And the road commissioner and I discussed it, and both feel that the contractor is capable of doing good work. And so I guess our recommendation would be to do that, or allow them to do that. I'm happy to add that onto an agenda item later if you wish, or address any questions about that now.
Questions or comments from the board on this? Yeah, Kern.
Comments, I guess. The previous year, it was the same contractor who was extremely late paving another one of our roads that they had already been contracted to do. As a matter of fact, there was some concern as to whether the pavement was going to be okay or not because of the temperature. I know I voiced some concerns back then when we awarded the bid for the work that didn't get done the end of last summer. Something probably like David said, it's the right thing to do for the town and the taxpayers' money. But I would like to see us alter the contract so that it gets done by a specific date. And if they can't do that, a fine per day. But I don't even know if I want to give them that option. Get it done by a certain date. We'll pay them what they had already said they would do it for. And I also would recommend we don't consider them again. I know they were probably low bidder, but that's 2 years in a row. And it's taxpayer money. I don't want to fool with it. Just my opinion.
Thanks. Yeah, Jordan.
Yeah, and I was also just curious. I mean, I agree with everything that you just said, Karen. I just wonder if we did decide not to allow them to go for it, what kind of impact on the timeline of the road work that would have. Would it push what's already not done out another year or so?
We would look to, if we don't accept the offer to continue, we would look to put last year's work out with this year's work for bid, assuming that the budget is approved in June. So we really, we're kind of pushed halfway in the year to begin with, because we never know if the money's going to be approved. But we'd combine it with this year's work and put it out to bid all together as a package, assuming the budget's approved in June. So then we'd be looking to get the work done between July 1 and the end of September and early October.
I guess I tend to agree with Kern and your recommendation, David, because I would hate for us to, stand on principle and end up paying 5-10%, maybe more for this work. And we have the money in the budget now. I mean, certainly I think Kern, like you said, shame on us again if they bid another paving contract and we consider them, but I don't know. I feel like I don't want us to start going backwards, and I don't want our citizens to have to wait that much longer to have the roads fixed like they should have been last year. So yeah. I'm at the risk of making this an ad hoc agenda item. I guess my thoughts and comments are that we should just get the work done and then have a better contract and bid process and that kind of thing for the next round, so that we don't end up in this position again.
Which roads would they be paving?
The roads we bid out last year were Thurlow Road, the end from the Beach Road up to the end of it, the paved section, and then Moody Mountain Road, about midway, about from where Martin Corner Road ties into it through to the Searsmont town line.
Okay. I think we should just go forward with it. Get it done now.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just, as far as money goes, we really don't have a choice here. They kind of have us in a tight spot. But I'd really like to, like you say, look at the way we award bids to contractors more closely next time.
So is a consensus, David, from the board adequate to move forward, or do you want us to motion on this either later in the agenda or at a future meeting?
Well, the board had awarded this contract last year for the prices bidded in the contract, and I think that's sufficient to move forward. If we hadn't had this offer, I would have just included it in this year's work. But if somebody wants to make a motion, or somebody wants to make a motion in the negative not to, then I would listen and write that down. But otherwise, I think we're good to go unless somebody objects to continuing.
Okay. Yeah, Kern.
The only thing that I'm concerned about is them not having a timeline dictated by us. To me, it's the same contract, but it's a different year. And I know probably they're trying to do the right thing by tied in things up that they didn't get to last year, but they didn't get to us again. So I really feel shouldn't we do something with a timeline on it so that we know it's going to get done ASAP?
We certainly can have an amendment to the existing to tighten up those timelines.
Yeah.
With them. I think they are looking to, I think it's advantageous on their end to have this work that wasn't completed, because now when things open up, they can, have work to do. So I think that works to our advantage to get it done. It also works to their advantage to have some work on the books, but we can work with them on firming that up too.
Okay.
So does anyone want to make a motion, or are we content with offering David our consensus and having him move forward?
I'm good with offering David our consensus because we've already awarded it.
Okay. Are you comfortable with that, David?
I am, if I see 5 nodding heads or nobody jumping up down saying no.
Okay, nodding heads we have. Excellent. Anything else under the administrator's report?
No.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move along to upcoming meetings and announcements.
All meetings are remote unless announced otherwise. The Lakes and Ponds Committee is scheduled to meet Tuesday, April 27th, 7 p.m. The Planning Board is scheduled to meet Wednesday, April 28th, 7 p.m. Midcoast Solid Waste Corporation Board of Directors scheduled to meet Wednesday, April 28th, 6:30. I had that down as a French conference room, but I'm not sure of that.
Zoom. That's going to be Zoom.
Remote meeting.
Yeah.
School committee is scheduled to meet Monday, May 3rd, 6 p.m. Recreation Commission is on the calendar for Thursday, May 6th, 5:30, to be determined. So call the town office if you're interested in that. And the Board of Selectmen meet next on Monday, May 10th, 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any upcoming community events anyone wishes to share? Okay, great. Then let's move along to the meeting minutes from the 12th of April.
I move that the board approve the April 12th, 2021 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Selectman Late and Selectman Garrettson. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson.
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
And Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes, the motion passes. Thank you all very much. And for agenda item number 6, David is going to be doing his electronic door opening, I suppose, and invite our superintendent over to give us a presentation on the 5-town CSD budget. And Maria, you are live with us and you have the floor. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. It's good to be here. You guys are my last presentation in our 5 towns.
Yeah.
Last but not least.
Hmm.
So I will share the presentation and go through it relatively quickly. And you guys could ask questions if you'd like while I'm going through it or at the end, either way. So just give me a second to get it up on the screen. I only see black on my screen. Oh, there we go. Do you guys see it?
Yep.
Okay. So this
We
is
do,
the
we do,
report-
Maria, but it's not in the slideshow. It's your whole screen. You might
Oh,
want
it
to,
is?
might want to hit start slideshow or something.
That's what I did was play slideshow. So let me go back out. Huh. I did play from the start. So let's try it this way. I'll give it one more try, then I'll just go from this view if you see my entire screen again. Yeah, you probably do. Do you see my whole screen?
Yes, we do.
All right, I don't know why it's doing that, but I'll just do it from, I'll try to enlarge this a little bit.
I think
And-
people can see it okay. I just wanted you
Yep.
to know that if you had some notes or something.
I probably do have some notes, but I don't think they're anything that anybody can't read, so. Okay, when we do our budget, we always use filters and, do a pretty careful analysis. We are always asking ourselves what's in the best interest of our students. This year in particular, what do we need to maintain a safe environment, and for next year? What have we learned from the pandemic, and how can we best allocate our resources given the climate we're in? How does this budget impact our long-term planning, and what is fiscally responsible to our taxpayers? So we are presenting a budget for the Five-Town CSD that's coming in at a 1.78% increase in expenses, which yields an overall taxpayer impact of 1.89%. Over the past 10 years, this is our enrollment. The next slide will be our budget increases or decreases over the past 10 years. As you can see, our enrollment has it's increased pretty significantly. That's really mainly due to tuition students who are coming into our school. We have, I'd say, about 50 tuition students at our high school right now, and that's what is maintaining this level of student population. We have 40 something from St. George, and then we have a handful from Northport. We usually have a couple from the Damariscotta area and a couple from Jefferson, Whitefield area each year. This table shows the increases to our expense budget and the impact to taxpayers over the past 10 years, with next year's budget in bold, and then the final column is the 10-year average of those increases. And one thing that is important to point out, because it's easy to have this be lost, later in the slideshow, I'm going to talk about the fact that we only have one debt service payment left next year in November for the high school. But in the 2017 budget, where you can see our increase in expenses was pretty normal, but the impact to taxpayers was really low. It was a negative 4.5%. That's because in that year, the state started subsidizing us for our entire debt service payment for the high school. So now our debt service payment is on the order of $900,000, and the state reimburses us, actually they pay for it, that $900,000 expense. So when we felt the relief from not having to pay for the high school any longer, it really came in 2017 when the state started giving us dollar for dollar for what we were paying. We won't see a change to taxpayer impact at all when we stop paying for it, because the state will also stop giving us all that money. So that relief came in 2017. So we have a number of cost centers, and I'll quickly go through each cost center. Usually at our public hearing in May, we vote on each of these cost centers. We're going to do a remote public hearing like we did last year, where we won't be voting on each of these cost centers. Special law, I'm sure you guys are aware of it, but nonetheless, we still create our budget based on these cost centers, and it's helpful. So I'm going to go through each one of them quickly. Regular instruction is our largest cost center. It's where all of our teacher salaries are, their health benefits, supply lines, professional development, contracted services. Most of the things that are happening in the classroom are in this line. We have a 2.32% increase here to expenses. Special ed is also fairly large, almost $1.5 million. Pretty small increase there, 1.35%. And just some of the highlights, we actually did decrease private tuition that we had budgeted previous years by $57,000. But we had to move $45,000 that almost offset that from our federal grant, local entitlement. That's what LE stands for. We had to move that into our regular budget because that grant can no longer afford to pay for speech and language because we have so many services that are required these days that our occupational therapy and physical therapy services really are taking most of that money. Then we have increased wages in each line. When we get a teacher who changes their health insurance, it's usually a very large increase. Like if somebody goes from a single to a family because they had a baby, all of a sudden we have a $10,000 increase in our health insurance expense for that one teacher. Midcoast School of Technology is a significant decrease. Again, it's not a lot of money here, but the percent decrease it's the largest percent decrease there is in the budget, 37%. That's mainly because the costs associated with Midcoast operations have decreased for this coming year, and their subsidy increased from the state, and our share declined slightly from 35.9 to 35.39%. And our share changes each year based on the proportion of our high school students, the total high school population, to the relative to all of the sending towns. And so we comprise, our high school population is about 35% of all the sending towns. So that's what we pay in their operating costs. The same year that Midcoast debt service came online from the new school was the same year that the state started paying for all CTE programming. So 3 years ago, if I had shown you this line, it would have been over $1 million. And now we're only paying $55,000. And that's because the state is paying for CTE first on, they're just taking that off. And these costs are the amount, our share over the EPS formula. So we had $1 million savings here. The very same year, we had almost $1 million debt service payment for the new school. So it was nice that it happened in the same year because it wasn't a big fluctuation one way or the other. The other instruction line, which is co-curricular and athletics, had a 2.83% increase, not much changing there except for wages. Student and staff support, which is things like technology, library, counseling services, health, the nurse, curriculum, that increased just slightly, 1.16%, mostly due to wages. And just as a side note, we did hire 2 social workers for the high school in the current year we're in, using federal money we got last spring. We will continue paying for those 2 social workers using federal funds for the next 2 years. After that, we actually had planned to add a social worker last year to our budget, and then we took it out when we presented our final budget because we had to cut costs in that we just decided not to add a social worker. Then we got federal funding and decided to hire one because we didn't have to have it in our local budget. So our plan has been to add a social worker. We were able to hire 2 because we got enough money and the need due to COVID. We're going to have to assess where our need is. To me, that would be a pretty heavy lift to add 2 social workers because that will be about a $200,000 increase just from those 2 positions, which is a lot in our budget. System administration is increasing by 2.91%. Some of those are wage increases, and some of that is higher lease costs, and that's for the central office. The central office will be moving, along with the Zenith Alternative Education Program, into the newly renovated Mary E. Taylor building halfway through the year next year by January 1st. And the rent charged to the high school district will be greater than the rent that is currently being charged for those spaces. And the reason for that is twofold. One reason is the space is the square footage is almost double, and the space will be much nicer than the current space where those facilities are currently housed in the bus barn. So for those two reasons, that rent is going up. School administration is a 5.7% increase. That's mostly due to actually an increase, some of it's an increase in professional development for administration, and salary increases are in there. Transportation is a slight decrease, even though it includes an administrative offset to pay for half the transportation coordinator role. But we've also paid off some bus leases, and we eliminated some redundant expenses that we found in those lines. The facilities line is another pretty significant increase at 10.34%. 12,000 of that increase is due to the increase in Zenith's rent for the MET space. Also increases in wages and supplies are in there. And then there's also a significant increase in equipment for a share of the MET and Zenith furniture. So we're not getting all new furniture, but maybe about half the furniture will be new in that building. And the high school and the SAD will be splitting the furniture costs for that. We do have some decreased electricity costs because of the solar projects we're involved in. We have a decrease in our contractor repairs, and we are contributing $90,000 to our capital reserve fund, which is a little bit more than we contributed last year.
Maria, why would that be?
The capital reserve fund?
Why would you contribute more? I mean, are you trying to reach a goal, or what are you doing with that?
Quite honestly, we originally had $100,000 in there, and we had to eliminate some money from this budget, and we ended up taking $10,000 out of that. But we are increasing it because the high school has turned 21. We know there are going to be some fairly significant expenses coming up for some capital repairs, and we want to have some money put aside to cover some of those major repairs. For instance, a couple of years ago, we redid the track around the football, lacrosse, and soccer field. And to be able to, if something like that costs $230,000, it's a lot better for everybody involved to slowly be putting money in that bank and then use it instead of having to do these one-time ads of $230,000 for a repair. That's a big add to our budget. So we've been trying to use the capital reserve as a little bit of a save the same amount, relatively speaking, each year, and then use the money when we have a really big expense. So we think we're going to need more money in that because we are going to have more repairs in the next 5 years.
Okay. I don't mean to jump ahead, but you're also carrying forward $325,000, which you've done for a couple of years, and I would think you could use that instead of putting $90,000. It's just, and I don't mean to confuse the issue by, jumping ahead, but I did have to notice that.
We can't use the fund balance for that purpose.
What is that for?
The fund balance is basically our general bank account. And we use that as a revenue source if we have enough money. And actually in the 5-town CSD, we've only used $325,000. I think this is only going to be the second or third year. Prior to that, we never had a carry forward because we didn't have enough money in the CSD. Basically, the overall bank account didn't have enough money to be able to use any of our general fund as a tax to offset the impact to taxpayers as a revenue. But I mean, last year we had quite a bit more money left over than normal. So we're able to use some of that leftover money as a general revenue source to offset the impact to taxpayers. We can't spend, that's just a general revenue. All of our expenses have to be on the expense side of our budget. So we have to show the expenses someplace. And we can't do a direct transfer from our fund balance into our capital reserve. We have to go through the budget process.
Okay. It's just, people are going to question that. In these times, they're going to question why you're rolling $325,000 2 years in a row, but yet you're taking taxpayer money and putting it in a capital reserve. So, and a lot of people aren't going to understand that.
Well,
Just saying.
yeah, and maybe you guys can help explain, if we didn't put money into the capital reserve when we had a major repair, then would have to increase, the budget increases to taxpayers would be up in the 5 to 6% range,
I
which
get,
we've tried to avoid.
yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
The question is, why are you rolling $325,000 when you are also asking for 90? So I just trying to make sense of it. That's all.
yeah, yeah.
Could I maybe just a clarification question for myself? What are you able to spend money on using that general fund?
Nothing. It's what we have left over after we've gone through a budget year. So if we go into our next year, the only thing we can spend money on is what we budgeted in that year. So, if we asked for $100 and got that and only had to spend 78 instead of the 100 we thought we were going to spend, so we'd have $22 left in our bank account. We can't spend that money once the years passed. It just goes into our bank account. The only thing we can use it for is as a revenue source to offset the taxpayer expense. If we didn't use it, we don't have to use it. We could just leave it in the bank and have it be there and have a really large fund balance. But there are actually rules that you can't have more than 3% of your budget in your fund balance, because you can't sit on taxpayer money without using it and just let it accumulate, which we don't want to do. So our fund balance, we have to have enough money in our fund balance, which is somewhere around $1 million, to be able to pay all of our teachers their summer salaries if our district were to shut down. Because the way we pay teachers is this year we're currently in, most teachers get paid for 12 months, but it starts in September. So if we shut down school and cease to exist at the end of this school year, we would still owe teachers the rest of their salary through the summer months. So schools always need to carry that amount of money in their bank account in case you ever shut down. Pretty low risk, but we're supposed to have that in our fund balance. And then what's beyond that, if we have money beyond that, we try to give it back to taxpayers by using it as a revenue source instead of asking for more money and letting a bank account accumulate.
Well, so I guess, and I don't mean to drag this on, but the money can be, there are things that it can be spent on, it sounds like. I mean, I'm all for having a reserve. I'm a little befuddled by that explanation. Because if it's a carryover, I understand that you're able to use it as a revenue stream. And I also understand needing to have a cushion so that in case something happens, you have money there. But it does seem like the money can be spent on something, correct?
No, I don't. It's partly semantics. The only thing we can spend money on is what we budget for in our expense budget. So unless I budget for that in my expense budget, whatever it is, I can't spend money. So I can't just take money out of the general fund and go spend it on anything I want.
Oh, I understand that. That doesn't need repetition. What I'm confused about is that you just said I understand how the budget works. It's just you just said the money was also used as a cushion in case that the school was shut down and you still needed to pay teachers. So there's an applicable way to use these funds. That's all I wanted to know. What is the way to use those funds? And you said as a revenue stream to offset taxpayer costs. But then you said that you can't spend it. So, I mean, I know basic accounting, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And that's the last I'll ask. But I was hoping for clarification on that.
Maria, can I just jump in here?
Sure.
You'll see, so it's not dissimilar from our budget process where we have the undesignated fund balance in our budget, and you don't see it. You see all of our expenses as we proceed through the budget, And then at the very end, we have our revenues and offsets. And you'll see later on in this budget, that's exactly how it's presented here, is that in the revenues, they have the carry forward, the fund balance, which is exactly how we handle it in our municipal budget as well.
Okay. So the next cost center is debt and other commitments, and that's declining a little bit, decreasing because the debt service is decreasing. That's the interest that we pay on the Midcoast debt is decreasing, and that will decrease for a long time as the Midcoast debt decreases. Other costs are board contingency and food service subsidy. That's decreasing by quite a bit as well. We decreased the board contingency line. There had been money in there for potential unexpected costs that we don't expect to have the potential for those for this year. So we're able to cut that from the budget. This is an overview of all of those lines, which together is a requested expense budget of $13.5 million, or a 1.78% increase in expenses. On the revenue side, we have a lot of non-assessment revenues. So these are revenues that come from sources other than taxpayers. We have not many, but this basically represents one parent who's paying tuition for their child to attend our high school who lives in a different district. The $588,000 is the school systems that are sending students to us from St. George, Northport, Damariscotta, Jefferson. Those are all school systems that don't have their own high school and they have school choice. So we are getting a pretty significant amount of revenue from that source. And then there are some pretty small things in there. State subsidy is a large one, $1.7 million. That's an increase of $51,000. You can see that carry forward. And our total revenues are increasing by 1.36%. That's the non-assessment revenues. When we look at the assessment side, the ED 279 adjusted local contribution, also known as the required local, is $6.9 million. That's outlined for us in the ED 279 printout. It's provided by the state. Our debt service allocation that we need to raise money for, that's the Midcoast School of Technology debt. Again, we use the percentage that's given to us in the ED 279. It's the same percent used for all of these things. And then we have the other additional local, which is the amount spent beyond the required minimum by the state in our district of $3.1 million. Together, those add to about $10.8 million, and added to the prior slide of the non-assessment revenues, we have our revenues that are equaling our expense budget at $13.5 million. The way this breaks down, the overall taxpayer increase is 1.89%. You can see that Lincolnville actually is ending up with the highest percent increase of any of the 5 towns. And this is really for a twofold reason. And that is because in Lincolnville, the share of students went up more than relative to all the other schools. The percentage of Lincolnville students went up by 1.22%. And in some districts, in other towns, I mean, the share of students went down. So it's really the spread and the relative difference, what's happening in each of the towns with student population. In addition, Lincolnville's valuation also increased. So Lincolnville kind of had 2 factors that contributed to them having the highest percent increase. This is a little slide that just helps show what's going on between Camden and Rockport versus Hope, Appleton, and Lincolnville. And why in Camden and Rockport, the amount that taxes are based on ends up being the pupil count. And that's because there is an amount of money that the state says we have to raise based on the number of students from that town. And then they look at the valuation of the town and its ability to raise taxes. In the case of Camden and Rockport, the ability to raise taxes is greater than the cost required. So the dotted line ends up being how much money Camden and Rockport have to raise, which ends up being based on the pupil count. The situation is the reverse in Hope, Appleton, and Lincolnville. If you think about this bar as just graphically representing the cost per pupil, and I made the bar smaller than Camden Rockport because there are fewer students from each of the towns of Lincolnville, Hope, and Appleton, although they're not the same in all three towns, so it's just a representation. But you have a bar that represents the cost to educate the number of students that each town is sending, and then the ability to raise taxes is less than the cost needed to be raised. So each town only pays what it can, quote unquote, afford to pay, or the ability to raise taxes based on valuation, and the rest is made up in state subsidy. That's the peach part. So in Hope, Appleton, Lincolnville, the actual cost to taxpayers ends up being based on the valuation as opposed to the pupil count. In Lincolnville is actually really close to the top. Lincolnville's valuation is slightly below the cost based on the pupil count. So Lincolnville gets a pretty small state subsidy compared to Hope and Appleton. These are the changes that are happening in each of the towns for valuation and pupil count. And if you wanted to look at just Lincolnville, you can see that Lincolnville's share of the valuation had been 12.5% this year, and next year it's going to 13.11%. And the pupil count had been 14.55% of the whole of our 5 towns, and next year it's going to be 15.77%. So because both of those things increased, that ends up having the impact that Lincolnville's taxes are increasing more than anybody else's. Because if you look at others, like Appleton's valuation went down and their pupil count went down. So Appleton's, actually, I think Appleton had a decrease. So the difference is really, it depends what's happening with pupil count and valuation in the town. And this is the impact per $100,000 of home value. So in Lincolnville, the overall increase to taxpayers is going to be $77,819. That is an estimated cost of $14.71 per $100,000 value of a house. Or for the median single-family home in Lincolnville, it will be a total of $27.19 that taxes will increase based on this budget. So we also added in this slide, which is the cost to each of the towns for their students' education. So if we look at the amount that taxpayers in that town are actually paying for this budget and how many students it's based on, and then we just do a simple division, and what is the average cost for like a Lincolnville student for Lincolnville taxpayers is $17,040. You can see Appleton has the lowest cost at $7,995. Camden has the highest at $20,096. And then just some other budget information. At the end of FY 2019, the unassigned balance was $301,000. The end of last year, it grew quite a bit to $743,000. That's because schools shut down in March and we were remote, and a lot of our costs were less than they otherwise would have been. That's really why there was more money than usual left over at the end of last year. Our capital reserve fund at the end of last year was $612,000. We project it to be $804,000 at the end of this year. And then with known expenses for next year that we're going to use the capital reserve for. We're projecting that we'll end the year next year at $587,000 in the capital reserve. What we know we're going to do with the capital reserve in next year's money is to purchase the solar panels that are currently on the roof at the high school for $170,000. That has a payback period of less than 6 years, which we think is a good investment. And right now we're paying for that electricity. When we purchase the solar panels, we will no longer pay for that electricity. It will save our electricity costs, and it will pay itself back pretty quickly. So while we are transferring $90,000, we're asking to spend up to $250,000. We never know if we are going to have some repair, like the boiler breaks or some major thing happens. We just don't know. So we always ask to spend a little bit more for unexpected or emergency needs, in addition to what we outline and identify. We are also going to create a special ed reserve account, basically for the same reason. We're going to transfer $75,000 from unexpended balances from this year in our special ed account, actually, to create a special ed reserve account for private placements that are unexpected. Sometimes, like, we cannot anticipate when there's going to be a private placement that we are required to do in special education. And those private placements can be anywhere from $60,000 to $90,000 a year. And sometimes we might have more than one, and we don't know they're coming. So we would like to have a reserve account, again, to just mitigate that really unpredictable high expense.
Maria, could you just explain at like a 40,000 foot view what private placements are?
Yeah, a private placement is generally for a student whose needs we cannot meet at the high school, who's in a special ed, and they go to a private placement, perhaps a school like Landmark in Massachusetts, where we pay tuition, room, board, transportation, all kinds of services that we have to pay for, and is incredibly expensive. It might be a placement that's not out of state. There sometimes are in-state places, but we have had a number of these cases are cases that end up going, they're legal battles. And because very rarely do we place a student in a private placement. We have a lot of programming at our own school. We have got the alternative ed program. We have a day treatment program. We have a life skills program. So we do a lot of our own programming that we don't need to have students go outside. But there are times when parents file a lawsuit against us saying that we are not meeting their child's needs. And sometimes the parents have unilaterally placed their children in these private schools. Then they file a lawsuit against us. And many of them end up going to mediation and settling, and we end up paying for a portion of those costs, sometimes after the fact. So that's generally how that happens.
Okay. Can you say how many students? I know it changes year to year, but like, what's the range of students that are that the school system is paying for, if you can say that?
The most we've had, I think, in my time has been 2. Right now, there are none.
Okay, thank you.
So this budget, what it does is that we have tried to offset some taxpayer impact with federal funds in a way that we can. You know, as you probably are well aware, we can't use federal funds for anything we budgeted for. And so we've been trying to focus on our federal funds to do one-time costs to improve our facilities, essentially. But the social workers were an exception. And we felt, rather than trying to add those to the budget, at this time, we would continue using federal money while we could. so that taxpayers could not have to pay for that in the meantime. The budget provides furniture for the new spaces, puts resources back into the hatchery, and maintains our other current programming. As some of the highlights. The adult ed budget is also a piece of the high school overall budget. There's not really a lot changing here. The expenses that are covered by taxpayers is the top portion, and the total requested budget is $373,842, or a decrease of 2.6%. They also have expenses that are covered by grants and other fees for an additional $71,000. So the grand total in expenses is 445, only a part of which comes from taxpayers. And you can see in most towns, the budget is actually going down for adult ed. Lincolnville, given what I've already shared with you as the reasons why, is going up slightly to 1.62%. And for whatever reason, Rockport is affected a little bit more on this side, and I'm not sure why that is, to be honest with you. Might be something I have to check, because I'm not sure why that is, but regardless, I'll make sure those are correct before it gets on the ballot. Our next steps are that the board's already approved the budget. We have a remote budget hearing on May 18th, and then the vote is on June 8th. So are there any other questions for me? I'm happy to go back to any slide.
Any other questions for our superintendent? I don't see anyone jumping up and down, Maria.
Okay. I can
Appreciate
live
your
with that.
time.
Yes, no problem. I appreciate seeing everybody and hearing from you, and hopefully all of our budgets pass this year. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah,
Thank you so
too.
much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
And while Maria goes off to her evening, next up on our agenda, we have a request from a citizen to have a conversation regarding the steps and procedure for a sidewalk from the school to the community library. And Rory, you're on our side, and I think if you're ready, you can unmute yourself and you have the floor.
Hi, my name is Rory Seliger. I live at 555 Hope Road. I've lived there for 10 years. I have two boys that go to school at Lincolnville Central School. We live right 2 houses over from the school, going towards the store. My concern, and I'm bringing up that I've had on my mind for quite a while, but now I really would like to pursue and see what I can do on my end to have a sidewalk put in between the school and that would possibly go down to the library. Since we have not had active police officer in our town, people are not going by the speed limit. There is very limited walking space on the side of the roads, and my boys have almost gotten hit a few times. My concern is safety, mainly for the kids in the community, but also for the elderly. And the pro to putting in a sidewalk on one side would be obviously for safety reasons. I'm aware that it's a state road. Both of them are state roads. And so I just want to get something going to get this process going. So maybe this can be pursued and happen eventually, hopefully sooner than later.
Sure. Yeah. Questions for Rory? Rory, thank you first for taking time to come and speak with us. It's always nice to see people's faces. Kern, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Hey, Rory, thanks for coming.
Hi.
coming over. So as far as a path for the kids to walk from the school to the library, there is a nature trail that goes right from the school right to the back of the library. Has there been any consideration of maybe partnering with somebody to enhance that a little bit to make it more user friendly? I mean, I was down there many times this winter. It's fairly wide and it goes right to the library from the school.
Yes. Oh, yes, there is.
Would be about the safest thing for kids that you could imagine, instead of having them buy a car on a road.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
couple.
That is to get to the library, but not for my boys or any other kids that are walking or riding their bikes from their house in Lincolnville to the school. My concern more is the school, especially that little hill that goes over towards my house. My kids have to walk up that way and people are coming over and they can't even see my kids. It's the visibility is very, very bad. And so if there was a sidewalk and somebody was to cross over the road and go on the sidewalk, that's going to become a legal problem. Right now they could get hit and there's not going to be a problem because there's no sidewalk there. So I'm not quite sure. My whole issue is that we do pay taxes and I'm concerned why we put money into other improvements in our town, but not something that's going to benefit our kids and their safety when they're trying to walk or bike to school. And it's not just my kids that do that. I see a lot of kids that walk and bike.
Jordan.
I totally agree. I mean, I hear what you're saying about the safety. It is, that road can be treacherous. But as far as the process, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is a little more involved than just building something, because we can't cut into the road. And I'm sure this would involve eminent domain and property owners losing, some feet of their property to accommodate the sidewalk. So while I trust me, I understand what you're saying. I just want you to know that the process is much more involved than just making a sidewalk. And again, if I'm wrong about that, please somebody correct me.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, hi, thanks for coming in, Rory. I'm wondering, it is complicated, they are state roads, therefore, my guess is that we would have to open up conversations with the Maine Department of Transportation. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you, or do you know of anybody, a group of center citizens who would be willing to accompany, be with somebody from the select board, somebody from the town in those conversations with the Department of Transportation?
Yes, I would definitely be available.
Okay. Well, you may be getting a call.
Okay. Yeah, I am totally available and it means a lot to me. So I will do whatever. And if I need to if you just want to instruct me, you can contact me. If getting people in the neighborhood or other parents or whatever, I can, even a petition, I'll do whatever I need to do.
Well, the second thing I might suggest is you might want to get in contact with our state rep, Paige Stanley Ziegler. Because he's one step closer to the state DOT, and he may be able to give you some pointers on what information they would like to have. But that's something that we should be looking at from our end as well.
Okay, yeah, I've already been in touch with him. He sent me to you guys, but I'll go back to him.
There you go. Yeah, okay.
Well, as has been mentioned here a couple of times, it's an interesting problem to solve, as there are 3 state roads in play there, and the right-of-ways are controlled by the DOT. As is the road beds, really. So it sounds like there's interest from the board in at least exploring this conversation. So a good starting point certainly would be to invite a representative who would be in a position to kind of outline any boxes we need to tick off or hurdles we need to overcome. And certainly, Rory, paying attention to when that agenda item comes up on our whatever agenda, we can get that individual to, hearing from the citizens and particularly properties that it may affect would be that much more impactful for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So am I seeing a nodding of the heads of the select board that we want to move ahead with asking our town administrator to see if we could get that ball rolling?
Yeah, certainly.
Definitely, yep.
Super. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rory, so
bet.
much. And we'll see what rocks we can turn over and answers we can uncover.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and even if it's just the 235, even if it's just part of that, that's a good little spot right there.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. So just stay in touch with the town office to know which agenda that'll be coming up on.
I will. Thank you.
Super. Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you,
Thank
Rory.
you.
Bye-bye.
David, you saw all of our nodding heads. Super. Okay, and moving along, we have some more community interest forms that have come into the board. And I see we do have one applicant here waiting. Does the board wish to chat with that applicant?
There we go. No. I'm fine.
All right. Well, would someone care to make a first motion, please?
I move to appoint Christine Parrish to the Conservation Commission as a regular member with a term expiring June 2023.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Barnett Parker, seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. Thank you, Christine. Does someone care to make a next motion?
I move to appoint Karen Federley to the Lakes and Ponds Committee as a regular member with the term expiring June 2021.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Ray, seconded by Selectman Late. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. The motion passes. And a following motion, please.
I move to appoint Jay Hiloon to the Lakes and Ponds Committee as a regular member with the term expiring June 2021.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Garrettson, seconded by Selectman Late. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. Motion passes. And a final motion, please.
Could I wouldn't mind could we hear from Jay about why he would like to be on the broadband committee?
Certainly.
Oh, it looks like okay, thank you.
Yep. And Jay, you're over on our side. So if you can unmute yourself and if you have video, great. If not, that's fine.
Well, I had video until just a moment ago. Can you until you switched it over? Yeah.
Well, welcome. Jordan, you had a question for Jay.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for showing interest. That's
Hi.
fantastic. I was just hoping that you could. Oh, there you are. I was hoping you could elaborate on why you would like to be a part of the broadband committee. Maybe some of the goals, or what is it that drew you to it besides?
This for the broadband committee in particular. Yes.
Yes.
I checked the Lakes and Ponds and the broadband. Well, I've been in the computer and software industry for 40 years. That's how I make my living. So I've always depended on the broadband connection. And when I came to Lincolnville, I grew up in Turner, by the way, which is a small town similar in size to Lincolnville, agricultural, and I guess I'm segueing into the lakes and ponds thing because I watched the degradation of the Turner water, lakes and ponds. Turner had a lot of population pressure from outflow from Lewiston and Auburn, which thankfully Lincolnville doesn't have. But the change from an agricultural community to a bedroom community was pretty fast and frightening, really. To get to the broadband, that's my livelihood. When I first moved here 25 years ago, I think an MBNA exec and me had a T1 line to ourselves. There were so few people going on. My major concern is, well, twofold. One is not just broadband, but affordable broadband. We've been suffering under a monopoly here, for a virtual monopoly for some time, and what we have to pay for what we get is above average for sure. The other thing that's going on is the money that's coming out of the federal government, and I think Governor Mills has just started a commission and there's some bills in Congress in LD 1484 or whatever, that there's going to be a lot of activity here in the near future. And I would just like to make sure that it's goes in the right direction.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Okay, sort of rambling, but there I am.
Any other questions for Jay while we have him?
No.
Wonderful. Would someone care to make a motion, please?
I move to appoint Jay Falloon to the Broadband Committee as a regular member with a term expiring June 2021.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Barnett Parker, seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Ray?
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker?
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. The motion passes. Jay, thank you very much for volunteering your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you,
Have
Jay.
a wonderful evening. And having dispatched that item, we have the special town meeting warrant for May 6th to make a motion on.
I move that the board approve and sign the special town meeting warrant setting the meeting date as May 6, 2021, the start time of 6 p.m. and the location to be outdoors on the recreation area behind the Lincolnville School.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Late, seconded by Selectman Barnett Parker. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson?
Yes.
Selectman Ray?
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker?
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes, the motion passes. Thank you all. And we have the draft supplemental charge to the Wage and Personnel Policy Board in your packets. Are there any questions or revisions anyone wishes to make? If there are none, I will entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve and sign a supplemental charge to the Wage and Personnel Policy Board regarding call firefighter life insurance coverage.
Second.
I'll
Moved.
second that. Second.
I think Jordan beat you to it.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It's moved by Selectman Late, seconded by Selectman Barnett Parker. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson?
Yes.
Selectman Ray?
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker?
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes, the motion passes. And next before us, we have a request from Selectman Barnett Parker. And with that, there is just missing the 11 on the top of all of your packet pages, so that the top of the third page is agenda item number 11. And Jordan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just to reinforce, or actually to come to an official decision regarding what we had discussed in the last meeting regarding partnering with LCI for this round of community grant funding from Connect Maine. I know a few of us had made some statements, but we never ended up taking a vote on whether or not we wanted to work with LCI, and I just felt that was an important step to take for a couple reasons, but also because it's been reported on in the press that the board had made a decision, and Alan Hensley himself, and this is not something bad, but has also been saying in the public, in meetings with other towns and in the press, that we came to a decision. I just felt procedurally that if we were making a decision, that it would be important to do that through a recognized public vote.
Geez, I thought it was pretty clear that when we just moved on the other night that we'd made a decision not to engage. And I think it was pretty clear. I don't think we need to revisit it. It's just my personal opinion.
Other thoughts? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I agree with Kern. Unless it is the case that LCI or Connect Maine are misrepresenting what happened. If that's not the case, I don't see a need to revisit it at all. It's a motion that did not get up from the floor to the table. And in my experience, that means it's a motion that was denied. So.
Yeah.
I just wasn't aware that there was a way to have an official decision without there being a vote.
Josh, did you care to share any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I guess for me, I could go either way. I mean, you know, no one made a motion. We took no action. So clearly we didn't partner with them. It is being reported that, you know, I don't know that if it's that we took a vote, but that we decided we weren't partnering with them. And so I could go either way on this. What I would like to see more is just a letter to Connect Maine saying that we decided not to partner with LCI, and then perhaps take that as an opportunity to state what our goals are, you know, an aspirational letter to them, perhaps even you know, drawing from the testimony that I'm going to give on behalf of the coalition tomorrow, just about the values of the coalition and how we support that.
Yeah, I agree with Mike and Kern. I have no interest in retroactively going back to make a vote on an agenda item that was clear in terms of the board's direction.
Now, as far as whoever's saying what in the media, I would not take any stock in the media. They can't get it right even when we type it. So I'm frustrated with them. So I don't think we need to revisit this. We've made our decision by not engaging. They got the message. They weren't happy about it, but hey, it is what it is. You know, and I don't think we need to carry it any further. You know, they know that we're not partnering with them because our name's not on the list or on the application that was.
It is, actually. And I sent a copy of that to David. Unfortunately, it didn't get disseminated before the meeting. But I have a copy of their application where Lincolnville and their 700 plus homes are clearly a part of the application. So that was my reasoning behind it. And I just felt that yep. And I just felt that, you know, even though we didn't vote, we are elected officials that came to a decision. And despite that decision, they decided to go on anyway. So that was what my concern was.
Well, yeah. Well, I would be concerned if LCI or anybody is misrepresenting what we said, what we agreed or agreed not to do. And I would think Connect Maine would be all over them for that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, to be real honest with you, but I've moved on. they know we're not behind them.
Well, again, I just have to say that it's not about them. This is about the Connect Maine and its community grant money. That's what it's about. So, and they don't know what our stance is, which is why the letter is so important. And it's not about LCI. It's about what we've decided on as a town, what our priorities are as far as the internet. And I think it's important to let Connect Maine know that that's what our priorities are and that this decision was made.
Well, how about we do this? Just throwing this out here. Write an aspirational letter, kind of a paraphrasing of what Josh's testimony is to the Appropriations Committee. Address it to the Appropriations Committee, saying this is what the town feels wants along the lines of internet broadband, and CC it to the Connect Maine and include the statement that, and by the way, Connect Maine, or we chose, the town of Lincolnville chose not to support LCI in its recent grant application, which is consistent with our goals. That seems to take care of both things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally on board with that concept, with the exception, and I would refer to the piece of the statement that Josh is going to be making that Deb Hall wrote, that I feel like the tone of that address is very appropriate for a municipality to make, in that they don't specifically call out any of the individual for-profit companies that any one of our towns may be having challenges with, or maybe going for any individual funds. So I think keeping it, I am all for the town advocating our position in support of the Mid-Coast Coalition, restating our very clear views, and making a statement to the effect that the town of Lincolnville has not chosen to partner with any for-profit organizations per our involvement with the Mid-Coast Coalition. But I would not be for specifically mentioning any private entity whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. I would just say an incumbent ISP or something to that effect. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And why is it that? And I don't understand this mentality that it's calling them out. They're applying for a community grant that they need to have our support on. So we're not making a comment about them or their business. We're just saying we're not partnering with them for this round of grants. I don't understand why that's a problem.
Karen, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I do. Jordan, probably you don't know this because you're new on this board and you're not as long in town as a few of us have been. Lincolnville Telephone Company played a huge part, or actually not Lincolnville Telephone Company, but local taxpayers as investors played a huge part in the development and longevity of Lincolnville Telephone Company. To this day, there are still investors as taxpayers in this town for Lincolnville Telephone Company. I myself had family members work for Lincolnville Telephone Company for 20 plus years. So there's a lot of people that have reaped the benefits of that little company in this town. The other thing is there's a fund that is funding our fire department.
The Lincolnville Community Fund.
Yeah.
With assets of around 3.5 million plus.
Exactly.
I'm well aware.
But you need to look into who actually made the donations. Okay. So I don't want to do anything that's going to directly point a finger at a local business that might put mud on our faces. So I think our best situation is to do exactly what we've already done. I agree with writing the note that Josh, or attaching the note or whatever with a few additions to it, but I don't want to point a finger. I don't want that responsibility. I don't want the taxpayers coming to me and saying, what are you doing? A lot of this town has benefited from Lincolnville Telephone Company. and it goes back many, many years. Right up at the end of my road here where I'm living, there is a family that started Lincolnville Telephone Company. So I'm just timid about standing behind something like that. That's all I got.
And I did not know, and I know about the history and I know about the sale, but I didn't know that the Lincolnville as a government was in the business of choosing which companies to back and subsidize and support. I just didn't know that was our role, and I didn't know we were beholden to a
That is not what I'm saying. I'm trying
Don't
to,
put those kinds of words in anyone's mouth.
I'm not. There was something that was just said about a private for-profit company, and lately, I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth. There are words coming out of my mouth, which I am perfectly allowed to do. Okay, and it's not pointing a finger in talking to a public agency that's funded by public taxpayer money about a publicly available grant application and letting them know that we did not partner with this company. You just said it's something we all decided on. It's a decision we came to as a select board. So how is it pointing fingers when it's just saying something that's in the public record?
in my mind, it looks like pointing a finger.
And in my mind, to go against, again, elected board is backhanded and it's not fair play. And I'm surprised that you guys are not a little.
Who's going against an elected board?
The internet provider that is applying for a community-based grant, which is different than a regular grant. If this was just a regular grant, not community-based, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But this is supposed to be something that's worked with in tandem with the community, and it's supposed to have certain effects. And our goal is to have an open network. This works completely against that. It has nothing to do with the provider that I won't mention.
Jordan, I want to see where they've said that we've made a decision. I want to see that.
I sent those documents and I can share it if I can figure out how to do that. I have a copy of their application.
Okay, I'd like to see it.
Well, there's a bigger conversation at play here. So I've heard that the board is interested in communicating our position. And Mike, I feel like you articulated it really well in that there are any number of funds out there that any number of organizations or entities are legally allowed to apply for currently. And there are grant boards that will take in those applications and hopefully do right by their appointed positions of reviewing those. And so it seems to me that your suggestion, and much to the point of Josh's testimony, that clearly and strongly advocating what we are for and what we are pursuing will get us a lot further faster.
Well, I would agree there. However, and I don't want, this is not the appropriate venue for this to be an adversarial courtroom where evidence needs to be produced. I don't think that's our business tonight. However, if it's the case that there is that, and a company is misrepresenting the town of Lincolnville, taxpayers of Lincolnville, we should know that.
Well, David, do you have the ability to share on your screen, or can you find that document readily?
I have it. I don't know how to
document
share.
you're talking or referring to.
I can share it right now. I have it right here.
I feel like somebody earlier said that I had something that nobody else has, and I don't know when that document was sent to me or I know it wasn't provided to me because I don't have it. And so I'm at a loss, and these are the things that if they come up, they ought to be in my hand so I can distribute them to the five of you. I feel like I'm completely at a loss.
Sure, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's okay. I'm lost. I mean, without information, nobody can make a decision on anything. And I feel that you're all grasping out there that because somebody has something that the rest of us do not.
So can we have a consensus from the board? Do we wish to see this document? I mean, the challenge and the issue that I have with this, in all fairness, is that it's not distributed at the time with our packet. But with the consensus of the board, Josh says he has this document.
Well, real quickly,
Mike, yeah.
I know that Josh, you're getting ready to produce a document, which is maybe the thing that we need. However, using the old courtroom analogy, and I'm no attorney, it would seem as if we were going to make a decision based on that document, we would want to have the people who wrote the document, LCI, present to say why they have done whatever the hell they've done. Just in fairness. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but it seems to me that their document is saying, well, we're making an argument of some sort, and we need to hear what that argument is before we judge it. But that's just me.
Yeah, Josh, thoughts?
Well, so I just want to give you before we share this document. It's not. I don't think it's as earth shattering as we're building it up to be, but I don't. So Connect Main has rules, right? And I don't agree with them, but they are the rules that they have right now. And so companies are fully entitled to apply for grants under those rules, and I don't fault any company for doing that. I don't, I thought that our board made it clear we're not partnering with them because we didn't take a vote. I think it would have been nice if they didn't apply for Lincolnville. I think that would have been the right thing to do, but I don't think they broke any rules by any means by applying for the grant for Connect Main, because they, under the rules, they're allowed to do that, even if we don't partner with them. I don't personally like that, but I don't think they broke the rules. So just to make, that clear from my perspective. But would we all like to see this grant application?
Well, yeah, Mike, my question is I think that this was in our last packet when they came and presented it, and it was just sort of a pro forma kind of document that listed the businesses that they're operating in. It wasn't. I didn't take it to read or imply condonement from us, just that they plan on making this application. So
yeah, at the last meeting, the verbiage, the wording that they gave us was two blurbs. Remember, one was fill in the lines, I, Lincolnville, support LCI in their attempt to provide broadband, and then blah 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 flowery stuff. And the second one was the Lincolnville Broadband Committee supports LCI in attempting to do whatever this is, and laid out a few things that they would do, a few tests. I don't know, but I have no idea what the grant application looks like or would say. And so let's see it. Let's see what it says.
Sorry, I think actually it was in our packet. I'm looking at our packet from last time, and I think it's the exact same document.
If that's the grant application, then they don't have it.
Well, there's nothing revelatory in it other than, so again, I guess we go back to, are we going to spend time focusing on what we're not doing, or are we as a board going to make a clear advocation for what our goals are and how we're going to pursue them?
Much rather do the latter, but
this is, and maybe I haven't explained it, but this is actually part of that, because if they get this grant and build out, it works against what we're trying to do. It makes it harder for us to create, a dark fiber or any fiber network that's open and in any way controlled by the town. So to me, it's part and parcel and the same. It does have a negative effect. It does work against what we've said that we're trying to do and what that our goals are. So
I think that's absolutely true. But I feel like we can write a letter that states our position while staying positive. And I would prefer to mention them by name, but if the majority of the board would rather not, then that's fine with me too.
I personally don't see how it furthers our cause, but I think it's more important that focusing on how to pass the legislation that you're discussing is the key, which really is the fact that currently only monies can't be disseminated to municipalities, correct? Basically, the way the funding structure is that it can be disseminated to organizations that are already at play, such as the for-profit ISPs that are working.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is what is our goal? What do we want to articulate? Do we want to articulate that we would like the legislation to change in a way such as the Mid-Coast Coalition can make forward progress? Is it supporting the legislation or the proposed changes in legislation such as your testimony is going to reflect? Mm-hmm. I mean, to
that's a big part of
I read that legislation and that's a pretty clear statement, and much to the point, Deb Hall wrote that, right? And she didn't call out a particular for-profit center because they're dealing with spectrum. Other communities are dealing with other for-profit entities that they're having challenges with. So it just comes across as a more appropriate and effective way other than calling out a company individually.
I agree.
So what does the board want to do? Does the board want to take any sort of action right now?
Well, if Jordan wants to put, or if any one of us wants to put a motion and get it seconded to vote on, let's do it and move on past this. If we want to put if you want to move what's suggested here, that we revisit this, as long as we're within the rules of revisiting, and I don't know what those rules are in this group, then we can vote on it up or down, however you want to do it, then we move on. And then we could focus on drafting a letter. Do we want Dave to do it? Do we want to use Josh's language, or how would we like to do that? I don't know.
Okay. I move to draft a letter to the Connect Maine Authority stating that we have not decided to partner with any internet service provider for this round of grants that are due on April 29th, 2021.
I will second that for the purpose of discussion, even though we have discussed it.
Okay.
So it's on the table.
Selectman Barnett Parker and seconded by Selectman Ray. I feel like this moves us backwards. I think the motion should be to draft a letter stating our express goals to the body that is considering it. I
agree. Well, I agree with that entirely, but I wanted to deal with this issue and then move on from that issue to another.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I just don't see how they're separate and it can even be one sentence. It literally just has to say, we are not partnering with any internet service providers for this round of community grants. And then we can attach that summary. Yeah.
Any,
That's very neutral.
any further discussion on this?
I guess for me, so I think all of us are on board with a letter that draws from the testimony that I'm going to give tomorrow about what our aspirations are, why we're supporting these principles that the coalition is advocating for, and as Jordan suggested, we could say, and we're not partnering with any incumbents or current ISPs at this time for Connect Main grants, and it can all, but that can just be just a very one sentence in this letter where the overall letter is really about advocating for what Lincolnville wants.
Right.
If that makes sense. So I guess I would ask Jordan and Mike if they would care to amend their motion.
Or withdraw it and make a new one.
Yeah, or we could do that.
I'm just a second here. It's in Jordan's court.
Well, I guess I don't understand what changes you're looking to be made.
Well, in my mind, your motion really doesn't support or perpetuate the stated goals of the board up until this point. It's kind of a divergence from every statement goal that the board has made regarding moving this broadband conversation forward.
I don't understand that at all. I don't know. How is that? How is that stopping conversation moving forward?
I didn't say stopping. I said it's divergent.
Yeah, could you explain to me how it's divergent?
Well, if you go back and read the directives to our broadband committee, our agreements towards the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition, and the progress that the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition is making, none of it is regarding communications to individual grant boards or
Well, I have to disagree, because in my work on the board, and in our meetings together, not mine alone, with Peggy Schaefer, Connect Maine, and both the offices of Senator King and Collins, I'm actually acting on the advice of Peggy Schaefer, and this is what was suggested to us by her. So I don't feel it's divergent.
Well, it's unfortunate that this select board doesn't have the same information that you managed to glean from Peggy Schaefer.
She did say to us, yeah, and you guys weren't in on that meeting, and we don't, I mean, there's a recording somewhere in cyberspace, but yeah, I think she had said that if an incumbent applied for a grant and a community and a town didn't want to support that, then they should write them a letter. But I think we can effectively do the same thing by doing what I suggested, where we don't have to say their name. We could just say that we're not partnering with any internet provider for this round of Connect Main grants, and then again draw from the testimony.
Well, so we have a seconded motion on the table, so we need to dispatch with that. So with that, Selectman Late, what's your vote? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
No.
Selectman Garrettson?
No.
Selectman Ray?
No.
Selectman Barnett Parker?
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is no, the motion fails. So let's move the conversation along. I hear a consensus that the board does wish to draft a communication.
Right.
How do they want to do that? Is there a deadline? What's the framework that the board wishes to adopt? And Josh, just from reading the last kind of backing and forthing regarding your upcoming testimony, it seems like there is and will be let's just say that it seems like there's always a ticking clock regarding this conversation. So not to rush the board, but what, from your viewpoint, would be the most effective way of drafting this? Because typically we'd either direct the town administrator or myself and the town administrator or yourself and the town administrator. Someone would be appointed to help draft this letter. It would come back to the board for our approval.
Yeah. So my concern, the Connect Main grant, the applications are due, I think, the 28th, and I know that's 2 days away. So it would be nice to direct David and perhaps you, Laidley, to work together. So I'm going to make a motion, and I'm sort of flying by the seat of my pants here. I move that we direct our town administrator and Chair Dunn to draft a letter to Connect Maine, stating our goals as a community when it comes to broadband, drawing from the testimony that Selectman Garrettson is going to give tomorrow morning on LD 1432, and also stating in the letter that we are not partnering with any ISP for this upcoming round of Connect Maine grants.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
But there's dueling seconds.
I'm fine.
Mike, I saw your hand first. I heard
Okay.
the voice. So it's moved by Selectman Garrettson, seconded by Selectman Ray. Is there any further discussion? Excellent motion on the fly there, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just one thing. I'm sorry to keep it this. Do we want to also direct this letter to the House Appropriations Committee as well? And even cast the net further to our representatives up to Paige Ziegler, Chip Curry, et cetera, et cetera.
I can't any
Just
negative
to-
for that.
Yeah, I don't see any negative either. And the reason I say that is because it's not, I mean, I look at the aspirational goals that we have as a town to get broadband to everybody as something which is not focused on Connect Maine. So,
And I agree. And I'll also add that, so when I testified on last Tuesday, that was for LD 1235. That was for the Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. I'm testifying tomorrow before the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. So they're both handling these kind of bills. So I would say both committees.
it would be nice. It would be nice to cast the net wide. That's all I'm
I
saying.
agree.
Okay, I'm scribbling notes furiously. I know David's scribbling notes furiously, and assuming this motion passes, we will take all of those down. So Josh, do you wish to amend your motion to also CC those appropriate and relevant governing bodies?
Yes, I wish to amend my motion to include those.
And Mike,
And I'll second
Okay.
the amended motion.
any further discussion? Seeing none, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes, the motion passes. Thank you. And is there anything else on this topic, Jordan?
No, and I was going to ask for a favor to step away for a minute to go to the bathroom if that was all right. I just didn't want to leave without asking.
No, we'd wonder if you just disappeared, but thanks for the heads up.
Okay, I will be right back. Thank you.
I don't know where the hall pass is, and so
The virtual hall
I don't know.
pass.
You're on your own.
It's the human body needs what the human body needs sometimes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So we will ever so slightly drag our feet and put our town administrator back on camera to give us a brief synopsis of the mutual aid agreement for Waldorf County fire protection that is before us.
Sure, thank you. We, the town of Lincolnville, participate in the Waldo County Fire Protection Mutual Aid Agreement. The county, working with the Waldo County Firefighters Association, has updated this to a 2021 version. The other one's a couple of years, probably a little more than a couple of years old now. I didn't look that up. But the fire chief is satisfied with this agreement and recommends the approval, and the county's circulating this to all the municipalities in the county for their consideration, and don't see any reason why we wouldn't participate.
Excellent, thank you. Any further questions from anyone on this? All right, seeing nothing, does someone care to make a motion?
I move that the board approve and sign the Waldo County 2021 Fire Protection Mutual Aid Agreement.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Lake, seconded by Selectman
Sorry,
Garrison.
sorry.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Selectman Lake, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrison, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Ray?
Yes.
Sorry, Jordan, to throw you in the middle of this. A motion has been made to approve the Waldo County Fire Protection Mutual Aid Agreement. Do you feel
Yeah.
comfortable voting?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what's your vote?
Yes.
And Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes, the motion passes. Thank you all. And Selectmen updates. Selectman Late, do you have any updates for us?
I have an update that we have no updates. Yeah, we have a Midco Solid Waste Board of Directors meeting, virtual meeting on the 28th. So we'll have something. Josh and I will definitely have something to report back by next meeting. No news is good news. Things are going well down there. So
Excellent.
all I've got.
Thank you very much. And Selectman Garrison, I am sure you have updates for us.
All right. Well, yeah, a lot's going on. There's, I don't know, sometimes a dozen emails a day because there's just so much happening on the state level, on the federal level when it comes to broadband. I'll just say this, and this is more for people at home since they didn't see my email to everyone. But so I testified on behalf of the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition last Tuesday in support of LD 1235, and this bill is basically to have $100 million bond for broadband. And so I was there speaking on behalf of the coalition. And then tomorrow I'm going to be giving a statement in support of LD 1432. And this is an act to update the Municipal Gigabit Broadband Network Access Fund. I won't get into what that means exactly, but I'll be testifying there on behalf of the coalition. And I'm also going to be, the other people that have signed on to the letter are the Peninsula Broadband Coalition, the town of Brooklyn, and the town of Sedgwick. And I was wondering if Lincolnville wants to also add their name to this letter. Just, I guess we could just do that by consensus if we wanted, because I'm just saying it.
Thoughts from everyone?
Yeah. I've read the letter and I would agree.
Yep. Me as well. Yeah.
I would think so.
Jordan, thoughts?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll add that, and I'm trying to think, Jordan. Well, I guess it's not your turn, but I'm just trying. There's just so much that happens. I really should just keep notes so I have try to keep all the greatest hits of what's going on with the coalition. Yeah, I might have said it last time, but Camden and Rockport are going to have it on their ballots to actually form the interlocal agreement with both of those towns. And And then in addition to these two bills, there's a lot of other ones that are coming down the pike that are supporting expanding broadband in Maine through a variety of mechanisms. And we're having our next Mid-Coast Internet Coalition meeting. Let's see, that's going to be on May 12th.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And at the risk of having this conversation last a little bit longer than just a select board update, but in listening to you, Josh, in hearing the amount of information you're having to intake and filter, the thought occurred to me, and I would love the board's consensus on this, that I think we should have a standing agenda item considering the frequency and volume with which the information is both barraging our representatives on the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition, and once our broadband ad hoc committee gets up and running, we'll do so also. And I get concerned about the frequency of activity in one arena starting to outpace our ability as policymakers to collect and digest it. And so perhaps if we have this standing agenda item, it can serve as a mechanism to help us constructively filter this information and maybe be a little more proactive instead of reactive when it comes to some of this information flying in. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
It sounds great to me.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's also good because it will force us to put, coalesce the information together. And because it has the amount of communication that's gone on, and just in the last 2 days, but really in the last, it is a barrage is a perfect, really, description of it. So I think when you're in the middle of it, it's easy to take it in, but at the same time, you're forgetting that you need to organize this in a presentable way so that we can bring our fellow selectmen people on board, like you said lately. So I think making it a staple agenda item can only help us in reminding ourselves that we need to bring this information in a presentable form to you guys.
Okay. David, I know we kind of just shoehorned that in there, but do you have any thoughts on that, or do you need anything else from the board to kind of get that rolling eventually?
All right, let me speak and my picture went up. No, I'm good with that. I guess the question, I don't know if I'm privy to all of the information that's been being circulated. I know I get copied in on some of the things for the Mid-Coast Community Internet Coalition. Hopefully somebody that's really looped in can make sure that town office has copies of what needs to be distributed in advance of the meeting so that we can get it in the packet and get it out there.
Well,
just because I don't know if I get it all.
Mhm.
So something, as you said that, David, obviously maybe a liaison, a point person, so that you're not having to chase around, feeling like you're now obligated to chase down every conversation that's happening. A question for you, David, and just for the board. So I know we've got a lot of folks who have been appointed by the board for our broadband committee, but there's yet to be called a meeting and have that be organized. And so what do we need to do as a board to get that ball rolling? Because I'm thinking the chair of that committee would be an excellent liaison to help funnel some of this information.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts, not to burden Selectman Garrettson or Selectman Barnett Parker any further, but perhaps in the interim they could be the gathering point and maybe break that down into a quick synopsis of what's occurred from meeting to meeting, and then at some point here, we'll have to get the broadband committee back up and going. You've appointed probably 4 or 5 members recently since you reformulated that. I don't believe the board has even appointed its own members to that. But we probably should, and we should probably reach out and push or see if some of the people that served before that are unaware that the committee's been reformulated, ask them if they want to continue, and then set a meeting and get going.
Okay.
Well, I'm willing to volunteer if the board's fine with that to contact all the former broadband committee members, just to let them know in case they missed it, that round 2 or whatever you want to call it is forming, and that they might want to, if they're interested, to get their community interest forms in. I'm also willing to be a select board liaison to that committee, or a select board member of that committee too, depending upon what the board wants.
Okay. I'm okay with it. What's the other board members' thoughts in having Mike do that reach out to former committee members that may not have signed up yet? Yeah, Karen.
That would be great. Mike, I just want to just make sure we don't have 3 board members on the committee.
I don't want to be on it.
You don't want to be on it?
I want to focus just on the coalition work, because that's enough.
That's the only thing that I would have for,
Sure, yeah.
if we had 3 board members on that and you guys were having a meeting, that's considered.
That's totally ex parte. We couldn't do that. Yeah.
So just so that this isn't devolving further into a spontaneous agenda item, can we get a nodding of heads that we're okay with Mike reaching out and doing that communication? And how about we put on a future agenda formalizing some appointees and having that conversation, and maybe in the interim, some more folks will roll in the door with community interest forms for the broadband committee, and then we can look at really getting that structure more coalesced. And in the meantime, we will put our representatives to the coalition in the hot seat until that other entity is more solid.
That sounds good.
Does that work with everyone?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we are still in, this is the danger of select board updates, but it just seems like in the conversation, sorry, Josh, to kind of commandeer your update and everybody else's time, but it seems like with the level of energy behind it, we'd be remiss if we didn't try to put some structure behind it. So thank you everyone for indulging that conversation. So Selectman Ray, do you have any updates for the board?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. And Selectman Barnett Parker, any updates for us?
Yeah, I'll give a very, very quick rundown of just some of the communications that have been going on with the broadband committee. Is largely in the last week, it's been a lot of fervorous talk about funding, different sources of funding that are coming in, whether it be federal or state bonds that will pass in the future. There's strong lobbying going on from the coalition, talking to lawmakers and representatives, like Josh is doing, letting them know the situation and having them try to lobby these organizations to target their funding towards communities. And so that's been a huge part of what's been going on in the last week, is just focusing that effort towards these bills that are being created and helping, if we can, to tailor the narrative more in the favor of towns like ours. So that's the majority of what's been going on in the last week, a lot of activity.
Excellent, thank you. And I have no updates for the board. So moving rapidly along, we have the treasurer and payroll warrants to approve and sign.
I move that the board approve the treasurers and payroll warrants.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Late, seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes,
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes, the motion passes. Thank you all very much. And before our last agenda item of adjournment, we do have an executive session that we need to enter into. And as such, I need a motion prior to us leaving this meeting and entering a new meeting to preserve the confidentiality of that executive session. And I have a motion, please.
I move that the board enter into executive session pursuant to Title I MRSA Section 4056C to discuss the possible disposition of real property where premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the town.
second,
Moved by Selectman Late, seconded by Selectman Ray. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn. My vote is yes. Motion passes. We will be leaving all. We have no viewers right now, so I will see you